Joining me on today's episode of The Player Position is Darragh Maloney. Darragh is one of Ireland's most well-known and well-respected broadcasters. Having joined RTÉ in 1995, he has gone on to be a presenter, reporter and commentator on some of the world's largest sporting events. Darragh details his rise to the top of the media industry, from explaining how he prepares for games, what it was like working in Qatar for the World Cup, and being on set with John Giles, Liam Brady and Eamon Dunphy. This is not one to be missed. Darragh, thanks for joining me. How are you keeping?
I'm great, not a bother.
Did you always have an interest in being a broadcaster from a young age?
I'm not really sure. I think maybe I did. It's funny. I was only talking to somebody about this the other day. I had an interest in meteorology, in the weather. And I remember because my father used to work down at the Botanic Gardens, which is very near where the Met Centre or the Met Office is. And I remember kind of going down there a few times and just being, oh God, I love the guys who were on the telly and the girls who were on the telly doing the stuff at the time. And I think it was probably more that I probably had an interest in sort of broadcasting than the weather. Now, I didn't get the exam results needed. I think you need chemistry and physics and all sorts of remarkable things that I know nothing about to be a meteorologist. So maybe it was kind of that, and I kind of, I suppose, accidentally slid into a bit of, community radio, hospital radio in Beaumont in Dublin. And just as a bit of a mess, really, it was something to do when, in the late 80s when there wasn't an awful lot else to do and my football career wasn't going that well. So, it just I kind of slid into it by accident, really. That's kind of the way a lot of these things happen, I suppose.
And like when you were in school or college, were you ever like doing much like volunteer stuff in terms of media, or were you not doing that?
Yeah, I was in school. God, I remember years ago, and actually the teacher in Chanel and Coolock sent me the tape. I have it somewhere, an old cassette. You probably don't even know what they are, Adam, but well, that's how we used to record things and play things and buy LPs and stuff on, or buy music albums on. We did a thing around the time. It was like, it wasn't Live Aid because that was 1984, but we did something in secondary school. It was a kind of a fundraising thing, and I was asked to kind of get a few songs, stick them on a tape, and do the sort of links between each song. Don't ask me why. Maybe it was because he knew I did stuff in the hospital radio station. Like that was when I was kind of about 16 or 17 or something. There were a gang of us there doing that stuff, So, I did a bit of that. And then college, look, the college, I studied journalism. So, we did a fair bit of that on the written stuff and then the media or the broadcasting side of it. So I suppose, when you think about it, you line up more towards the print stuff. And then I just happened to do more of the broadcasting just in the background, kind of doing stuff with the hospital radio station, with community radio around here. Up in Coolock, there was a station called North Dublin Community Radio. So we did a bit of that. But I suppose, look, and I suppose in terms of the sport bit, you never actually, like this is like 1990, 91, 92. Coincided with the explosion of the Irish soccer team with Jack Charlton. So, it was a great time for that. And more and more people were interested in football that really had ever been before, because we were at Euro 88 when I was doing my intercert, as it was called. The World Cup was in 1990. That was the leaving cert, right in the middle of both exams. Explains the dodgy results. But, so it was like sport was kind of exploding in terms of coverage in that. So, when I finished college, then I'd been in Century Radio, which was the forerunner to Today FM. It became Radio Ireland, and then it was the national commercial radio station, and it closed in, I think it was 1991. It ran out of money, and I was doing kind of work experience in there, and I'd done a few bulletins on air and stuff like that, and a couple of matches for them. Which were real fun. I didn't know what I was doing, but maybe nothing changes. So, did bits and pieces of that. And look, I suppose that time people had more of a demand for sport. They wanted, more. And the Sky were starting their coverage of the Premier League that time, 92, 93. So, Sky News was very big as well. So we became more used to getting more regular sports updates and things like that. So that 104 started doing it. Century had been doing it. 98 were doing it. So it just kind of exploded from there.
What was your first experience after college? Like, what was your first full-time job working in the media industry?
That was in FM 104. It was called Rock 104 at the time, and it's still FM 104 is still there, still going strong. Best thing that ever happened to it was I left in 1995. But there was a guy called Con Murphy there, and the sports stuff started to really sort of explode. The hourly bulletins, the breakfast show was called the Rude Awakening first, and then it was called the Strawberry Alarm Clock, which I think is still there as well. This is a long time ago. This is 30 years ago, but so I kind of did a few little bits and pieces in there. I was doing part-time work in there while I was still in college, so there was a sort of a weird scenario. I could have left college and gone to work full time, but thankfully, people far more intelligent than me talked me out of doing that. So I stayed until I finished college and graduated, and then went into 104 with Con Murphy, and worked the weekends, and then started just doing more and more. And I was there from 92 until 95. Con left. I think Con left around 93 and joined RTÉ, and I followed after him 2 years later. So that was my first kind of proper job, real job. So that was in 1992.
RTE job came up. How did that happen? Did they reach out to you, or did you apply, or how did that happen?
The RTE thing came about. I'd been sending them a few tapes after Con Murphy left, and kind of he was one of my closest friends. So while he was in RTE, I kept in touch with him, and it just kind of, he would raise an awareness that I was there with people in RTE. So, I just kept banging down a door that seemed like it wasn't going to open. And then an opportunity came up in 95 because Tony O'Donoghue, who's the soccer correspondent, Tony was working in RTE Radio, and the RTE newsroom with their 6-1 bulletin or whatever it was called back then, they decided to do television sports news bulletins. So they were doing them during the week and on the weekends, and they needed someone to do it. And they got Tony over to do it. And he kind of started what you see on the TV now. Tony started all that really on his own. A lot of technical help, obviously, and editorial help. But in terms of the sort of footprint, he did that on his own. And it just that opened a slot in RTE Radio. And I sort of jumped at it when the opportunity came. So that was in 1995.
And obviously you were starting then in radio. Was it always your goal to be a broadcaster, like in terms of commentating and presenting on TV?
No. Well, I suppose, listen, heroes of mine, George Hamilton, Ger Canning, Jimmy McGee, people who Jimmy is no longer with us, thankfully. George and Ger are, but I would never have thought that I could do anything like they do. I thought, great, I'll read out sports bulletins. I'll, be able to say, here's Adam Courtney in Belfield or Talca Park or whatever, or present a program that way, or write a script. I had all those skills, so there was no problem with that. But the commentary thing was, I used to be sent to matches and do reports on them. And that was fine. But the commentary thing was kind of an accident. And even so, the television was by extension an accident as well. So, I was more than happy doing the radio bits and pieces. The commentary came along because somebody was sick one day, and I can't remember who. And I remember I actually met the man I did my very first commentary with. I think it was around 1997. And it was over in Belfield. It wasn't called the Belfield Bowl, but I think there's apartments built on it now, or beautiful office blocks in UCD. And UCD were playing Bohemians, and a League of Ireland legend called Dave Tilson, who I met last July. I was doing the match with him, and I was absolutely terrified. We did it sitting out of the side of a Hi-Ace van, Toyota Hi-Ace van, with the doors open. It was bitterly cold, and we're looking at the match. And UCD don't get the biggest crowds in the world anyway. And there might have been 500 people at this match, and we did this commentary on Sunday Sport on Radio 1, and it was terrifying. But I always remember Dave Tilson was with me, and he was I did my first ever commentary on a soccer match beside him. So I was slagging him about that recently when I met him, but he hasn't changed a bit. I've changed quite a lot, but it was a great experience, and terrifying. And I thought, no, I can't do this. I'm not really. You have so many doubts with all these things. That's only natural, I suppose, as well. But it just kind of started from there, and did the radio stuff, and then in 1999, the Champions League went to 2 nights a week. It used to be just a Wednesday. They expanded the competition, and they were going to need 2 commentators. They had George and they had Jimmy McGee. And at that time, Jimmy was ill, unfortunately, and wasn't going to be able to travel to the Champions League matches or the Premiership matches, which RTE had the rights to at that time. and they needed another commentator, and a gang of us went for auditions. And again, I just thought, oh, here, I'll chance my arm, and I went for the audition and I got the job. So yeah, we've been kind of there ever since. And then, like, look, the presentation thing, that's just another accident. You're told, oh, here, will you try this, or you fill in for this person? And they kind of, like, RTÉ would start you off on, smaller things. It's the sort of sink or swim idea, where you'll either be great and you'll be able to swim, or you'll be awful and you'll sink, and we won't do that again. So that's kind of what they did with me. And it just sort of built up over the years, more and more of that. And I've been lucky to be able to keep both going, to keep the commentary going when there was more presentation, and vice versa. So it's kind of flipped around the other way now. There's kind of more commentary, the presentation, but I still get to scratch that itch by doing some presenting now and again.
And with the presenting, do you remember your first kind of gig doing that at all?
Yes, I do, actually. That was, wow. So that was while I think I was still in radio, right? And it was, I can't remember who the two teams were. I know one of them were Sligo Rovers, because we were in the showgrounds in Sligo, and it was a League of Ireland match. And somebody was unwell and couldn't do the thing. So they wanted me to be involved in it. And my first instinct was like, I don't want to do this. I've never done, I was still on radio. I'd never done any TV really. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And I was going to try and chicken out of it, which says a lot about my character, doesn't it? And what they did was, Ger Canning was commentating on it. So Ger actually kind of started the program and then did a few of the other links and stuff. And they just kind of had me doing interviews and that, and, a little panel discussion bit and, that sort of thing. So that kind of took a bit of the pressure off me. I think I still was rubbish, but that's kind of how I started that. But it was, they were very careful, and always have been with me, even when the late great Bill O'Hurley, he retired. They kind of were very careful with how they sort of how they managed me, which I'm grateful to them for, actually. So they were very sensitive in how, they kind of increase your role gradually and things like that. That was what they kind of did with, like, there was no big, it's not the same, but there's no big, oh, who's taken over as the host of the Late Late Show, who's taken over from Bill O'Hurley. They kind of, it nearly became an organic thing that, one year when they'd made that decision, and it was like, right, the first year I'm doing 2 out of 10 Champions League games, and the second year then I do 4, and so they kind of, it's just to get, I suppose, people used to you in a way that when they don't actually realize they're getting used to you, if that makes sense.
And obviously with Bill, he was such a legend of Irish broadcasting. Like, obviously you were working with him a lot during those years, as he was kind of winding down a bit, and then you were kind of coming and doing more gigs. Like, what was he like with you during that time, and was there much like advice he'd give you or help he would give you at that stage?
He was unbelievable, and regardless of what other people have said, he was very involved in deciding, right, okay, I'm gonna go now, and I want to give you my tuppence worth to the RTÉ management as who I think should take over. So I'm very strong on that. That's what happened. But he was just really just an incredible. Well, look, again, as I said to you, like a hero of mine. When I was in college in 1990, they wanted us to do a kind of written submission, but try and meet somebody who you really admired. And I went and I interviewed Bill, because at that time, Bill and Eamon and Johnny, this was the only show in town, and with the World Cup and the team going so well, they were absolutely brilliant. So I did an interview with Bill in his office in, I think it's Fitzwilliam Lane in Dublin. And it was fab, but and he was so nice. But like, again, just I suppose to get to know somebody and to see how they work, and he'd always be giving you bits of advice. Always. Like, I even remember as late as like in 20. So he finished after the World Cup final in Rio in 2014, and that September then, for the Ireland qualifiers for the European Championships, he ran a PR business as well. And actually, the first night we were doing the match, I can't remember who was playing, but this was my kind of first night taking over officially from him. Bill was no longer in the building, and it was me. And he was in actually doing a bit of recording for a charity, a brilliant charity called Darragh Ireland. And he just wanted to get us with these. The Darragh, the logo, it's a really serious skin condition that young children suffer from. And the logo is a little butterfly, and he had these little tattoos, and he put them on our hands, and we filmed little videos and stuff. But he was in the room, in the studio, like about 20 minutes before we started the program, and like he could see I was properly terrified. And just we did all the bits and pieces. Johnny and Eamon were there. I think Liam might have been there as well. I can't remember exactly. But what I do remember is he walked towards the door and he just looked back towards me and kind of winked at me and said, "You got this." And then off he went. So that was very much Bill, but he was always there, a really steadying kind of presence. And like, in 2014 was the Olympics in Rio. Yeah, isn't that right? No. The London Olympic Games, sorry, in 12. And I would have been on before him, and he was doing the nighttime program. So I was doing the afternoon thing. He was doing the main nighttime show, because London was such a huge deal because it's in our time zone and everything was happening in prime time. And like, you work, the Olympics is a brilliant gig, but it's exhausting. Like, you're sort of working for maybe, so the 16 days of competition, and then there's probably another week of prep. So you're working for, 20 odd days straight. And I was exhausted. Like, the Olympics, you get to sort of day 7 and you're like, whoa, there's a long way to go. You're not halfway there out of the 16. And I was absolutely exhausted. I was doing GA matches as well and things like that also. But, he had the main show, the most hours per day, and like an army of guests just coming in and out. And he made all of them feel so welcome. He got the best out of them. He made it all about them, not about him, which was always Bill's way. And I remember just thinking, where on earth do you get the energy? Because he'd be doing his PR job as well as the RTÉ stuff. And he'd bound into the place like a 14-year-old, just kind of, I'm full of energy, I'm full of life. But yeah, he was just amazing, but just always there, a great kind of presence, and massive to be able to ask him, look, Bill, what do you think of this? Or what should I do with this? Or how should I do this? So he was just awesome. Miss him.
Yeah, I can imagine, like you said, like so many people would be kind of, a bit bitter or whatever if someone was taking over from them, but he was just such a great guy. It's a great testament to him. But I suppose most people, like if you ask the average person, like, they wouldn't really have the confidence to be on camera or, be a broadcaster. Like, do you feel like that confidence was always there from you from a young age, or was that something that has taken time to develop?
No. Oh, it's taken time to develop, and maybe it still hasn't developed. Maybe it never will. I suppose one of the things with it now, I suppose, look, the more you do, it's like we always talk about air miles, and it's the more experience you get. That's, the more hours you do on TV there, you're like the more hours you do flying a plane. So, but look, at the same time, you still get surprised by stuff still happens, but I suppose we'd be pretty good critics of ourselves, our own sort of best critics, that if you make a mistake, you'll say, right, I'm going to make more mistakes, but I'm not going to make that one again. If it's something about your preparation or the way you phrase something, or something you did in the background beforehand, that you can say, right, no, hang on, I'm not doing that again. So no, I was always terrified of it, didn't want to do it. Like in college, I remember one of the days we had one of these video sessions, and I sort of wasn't feeling 100%. I might have been 10% sick and 90% okay. I was like, I'm not going in to do that. I was like, I don't want to watch myself on TV. And look, there's still a bit of that now, but you kind of get more and more used to that. And you do, like, I've done some really heavy sessions with brilliant producers where they would literally take you asunder, but in a good way. If there is a good way of taking you asunder, I'm not sure. But they like, that's the kind of criticism that you want. And if you get it from somebody that you trust, then you're okay. If you get it from somebody who you don't trust, well, that's a different matter completely. But no, I suppose, look, and I wouldn't say that confidence on camera. I suppose one of the things that we try and do, and it can be dangerous as well, and like Bill and Johnny and Eamon pioneered this, where you wouldn't even, it's like when they were talking that they didn't even realize there was a camera there. So that to me is one of the tricks with it. Just forget the camera and just talk and let them talk, like, as I said to you, Bill was the master of making his guests and his panelists the stars of the thing, because he understood that, like, and I would always say this about me, like, in terms of opinions, and invariably we all have opinions. There's a few sayings about that I couldn't really say here, but we all have opinions. But like, I want to hear the opinion of the guy who's got 8 All-Ireland medals, or played in a World Cup final, or played 100 times for his country. To me, they're the opinions that matter, not mine. I didn't play at that level. I'm a kind of chancer here, So that to me is one of the ways that works so well. That you kind of, it's about them, but also you forget the camera is there. Now, as I say, that can be dangerous if you let your guard down too much, and that's happened before. Some very famous instances where that has happened. But look, that's the world we work in, and I think it's one of the things that we do quite well, that we just we make the programs and the coverage about, well, it's about the match and the players, obviously, but then the stuff you wrap around it is about the people that we have in that room who are all very talented. They're all chosen for very specific reasons. And one of them is that they can articulate their views so well, and people want to hear their views.
And obviously over the years, RTÉ has had so many great pundits, but probably the most famous trio was Liam Brady, John Giles and Eamon Dunphy. And obviously I grew up watching you and the three of them, you know, on Champions League or Ireland games or whatever. Like, what was it like being a part of that coverage? It must have been amazing, because it was, you know, it was so well recognized by everyone at the time.
Yeah, look, it was, well, I suppose, listen, you know, Bill had the four of them kind of pioneered that. I suppose Liam arrived later, so it would have started with Bill and Johnny and Eamon. And like, look, it was just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing will ever be like it again. And the platform that they had, you know, the audiences that they brought in, the longevity that all of them managed to you know, bring to the party, and to be at the top of their respective games for so long. And like, you know, Johnny is still broadcasting with News Talk. Eamon is still doing his podcast. Liam stepped away just recently, or during last year. You know, but like, they were amazing to watch, and to be kind of like, look, half the time I felt like an imposter, that it was, you know, this was their platform, and you just kind of, you know, like, again, I tried to make it all about them, you know, that it was their, you know, let them do what they do, and they did it so well for 40 years and more. So it was kind of, you know, like, it was always going to change a bit, because like, I'm not Bill, and I didn't want to try and impersonate Bill. I just wanted to try and kind of be me, but also have, you know, make it very important that it was about Johnny and Liam and Eamon, and their opinions were the only ones that mattered. And look, you get the kind of back and forth bit, and there were, like, we had the odd disagreement and stuff over the years, but most of the time it was plain sailing. But you always, because you were around three great Irish internationals, great football people, great pundits, you knew you had to be on the top of your game, and you had to be ready for every eventuality, because you wouldn't know where the conversation would go. Like, there were no kind of scripts with those things. Like, the lads would decide what they wanted to talk about, what they wanted to analyze and look at in terms of video and stuff like that. So you know, it was their show, and I was just kind of there to do the TV bits that needed to be done, you know.
And I know you talked about the way, like, you know, you haven't won All Ireland medals, or, you know, played for Ireland, so you want to, like, facilitate the best conversation. But that's something that you always did. Like, you always managed to facilitate, you know, not just a good conversation in terms of football or whatever, but also, like, bring their personalities out. Like, did you feel like that was something that was hard to do? Obviously they had massive personalities, but did you feel like it was hard to kind of facilitate that conversation?
Not really. Like, you know, again, like, the starting point was, you know, this is about the match, right? And it's about the players, whatever team it is, or if it's an Ireland game, or if it's a Champions League game, or whatever. And then it's about them, you know, and like, because of what they bring, and no other TV panel ever did that, or ever will, because I suppose it's changed so much now these days. But you know, like, I didn't feel under like, their personalities, my God, like, I couldn't I couldn't you know, do anything to assist their personalities. Like, it's funny, one of the après match things, which I think I was very upset about it at the time, but I laugh myself silly at it now. Well, there was one they had where they I suppose I was wearing these dark suits and stuff at the time, and they said, "You're like a limo driver," which I was like, "This is a disgrace," but actually I think it's really funny, because I did look like a limousine driver. And then there was another one where the caption was, "Darragh's just trying to have the crack with the lads," you know. So I was just like this rabbit in the headlight stuck in the corner. Again, really annoyed about it at the time, but I think it's really funny now when I look at it. So yeah, it's, look, they just did what they did, and I was there to facilitate that as best I could. Some days I did it okay, and other days I didn't, you know. So.
And how did, like, the lads take the après match? Because I always thought they were funny at the time.
I know. I think they'd sit in the studio watching them afterwards, because invariably they'd come on at the end of an Ireland game or a World Cup game. That, you know, we haven't had them on in a while, but yeah, like, I used to dread them, actually, and maybe that was my own kind of lack of confidence in myself, or I suppose at the time. But yeah, they would all sit. The music would play, the program would finish, the lights would go off, but nobody could leave until we saw what après match did, because we'd no idea what was coming. You know, you wouldn't have a clue, and you wouldn't know if you were in it or not. And half the time to be a relief. Oh, thank God I'm not in that. You know, but yeah, they really enjoyed them.
You know, when you're going away for tournaments, like just as an example, like you went to Qatar for the World
Mm.
Cup in 2022. What was the experience like being away for that long? Obviously, it must be tough being away from your family and from home and stuff, but then it must be amazing to be at these unbelievable events.
Yeah, like look, you've got to balance that up, and there's sometimes I do that better than others. Like that was it was a hard trip because there were so few of us there. Now look, you were very busy. I think there's 64 matches, isn't that right? And
Yeah.
I think I did 15 out there. George did 15 out there, and the rest of them were done in Dublin. That's not any big trade secret. That's just the way these things are done now, because of finances and money and stuff. But yeah, like I was away for 31 days and it was hard. But look, I suppose you have to balance it up with this is your job. And you know, I hadn't been away at anything like that in such a long time for that duration. There's normally a day here, a day there, you know. But I hadn't been away for such a long time. And then when you're offered the chance to kind of go to a World Cup, and I'd been at two before. I was at 02 and 06, and then worked on 10, 14, 18 as one of the presenters in Dublin. And like the one in 2018, like I was the main, I did present the final and stuff, France and Croatia. So that was amazing. But I suppose there's always this thing, God, I'd love to actually be at it and be at the World Cup final. Now, the commentary position we had, Adam, we were up, I think we were in a different country. We were so far away. It was like watching Sabutio, because RTÉ wouldn't be very high on the list of on the list of huge broadcasters when you've, well, particularly when you've, you know, the Argentina and France are the two teams, so they get priority in the final. But yeah, look, it was an amazing experience. You know, amazing to see that country, which is the same size as County Louth, the furthest journey. It was a great tournament to work on in terms of travel, because like as I say, in Japan and Korea in 02, you were flying from one country to the other. Germany in 2006 was like we called it the World Cup of trains, because we just went on trains up and down Germany all the time. Now, brilliant experience. Oh my God, like don't think for a second I'm giving out about it, or it was just astonishing. But this thing, like 50 kilometers from the hotel, we had the same hotel room for 31 nights in a row. And this place was very easy to get around, very safe. And I know, like all of the social issues around the country, the sports washing, the migrant workers, we saw some of them outside the hotel, you know, really, really hard to see. But we were kind of shown the best of the country. I'd love to go back now. And I remember getting into trouble towards the end of it, saying, you know, there was all this, you know, people rightly kind of pushing back against the human rights violations, the workers' rights, which had improved, but they were starting from a very low base. But people were saying, look, there have been improvements. But, you know, I was kind of saying, well, let's see, will the BBC and RTÉ be back here next December, which would have been last Christmas, you know, the final was on the 18th of December, 22. So yeah, and very that hasn't happened, and we hear Qatar I've actually finally learned how to say it properly, Qatar as opposed to Qatar, which sounds like that stuff gets stuck in your throat. But no, like you hear it's very much in the news at the moment because of the negotiations in the war in Palestine and in the issues in the Middle East. And yeah, but like the people we met, the local Qataris were very nice to us, and you know, you couldn't have. The hotel was very nice. It was very warm, even in November and December. There was no way you could have played it. Even I'd say even in September it would have been like 40 degrees. Never mind in the traditional time of June. But yeah, I suppose look, with the world's media there, we saw the best of it, and I think it was designed to be that way. You know, but it certainly, from Qatar's point of view, it served its purpose, and it put the country, a tiny little country sticking out into the Gulf, it put that country very much on the map. And I think in the process of doing that, it cost them $220 billion over how many years, you know. So
being involved in these massive tournaments like must be such a great experience. But overall, like in your career, what would be your kind of thing you're most proud of, like whether it's a moment or overall just an achievement or something you've worked on?
Do you know what? Maybe getting away with it for so long that here at 51 years of age, I'm still here, still getting away with it. I don't know. It's a tricky one, Adam, to look at. You know, like I loved the World Cup final, and I loved the All-Ireland final. this year, or sorry, I got in 23 and also in 22, which was the first one I'd done on TV. I suppose there's like a recency bias with these things. You're just going to think, oh yeah, great. Like, you know, I was happy enough with Tralee and Kerry and Derry the other night. So I've been really lucky to do so many amazing matches, be involved in all of these kind of iconic moments. Like I was the sideline reporter, or the touchline reporter, you should say, in 2001 when Ireland beat the Netherlands in Dublin with Jason McAteer's goal. It more or less qualified us for a playoff to go to the World Cup, which we got to. But yeah, look, listen, you know, we're really lucky with what we do, that no 2 days are ever the same. We're really lucky at the moment that we still have a fair bit of sport to cover on RTÉ. You know, so we've got the Euros coming up this year, the Olympics, the GA has started and won't finish now until August. So yeah, it's, you know, kind of, okay, I say that tongue in cheek. I'm just glad to still be here. There is an element of that, to have gotten away with it for so long. So, you know, it always surprises you what we do, and there's never a dull moment with it.
And over the years, like, you must have been given lots of different pieces of advice, like you were talking about Bill and stuff like that. Like, is there one piece of advice from someone in your career that stands out for you?
God, that's a really tricky one. I remember early on being told, look, you know, when you're trying to break into it, because like say when I was doing that, so early 90s, you're trying to kind of get your foot in the door and everybody wants to do the same thing. And you're kind of, I suppose one of the things is just don't give up and don't take no for an answer. Now, there's a balance there between making a nuisance out of yourself and, you know, being just, you know, hitting it at the right time. It's very hard to do that. I think, you know, hitting it at the right time where you're not an annoyance to somebody, where you're constantly at them. But, you know, I think it's just like, if you can get your foot in the door, keep it there. You know, and just try and build from there and get into, if there's somewhere you want to go and work and like go in, like I did, that running around with scripts in that Century Radio place and making tea for people and going to get lunches for people in I think it was called Mother Redcap's Market down in Christchurch. The building is still there, but like the studios are long gone. Yeah, just don't give up. Don't give up, and you know, I suppose, listen, enjoy the moment. Stay like I'm big into kind of mindfulness and well-being and stuff at the minute. So, you know, once you get somewhere, cherish it, enjoy it, and don't be thinking about what's coming next. You know, just enjoy it for what it is, and the next thing will come along when it's ready. But yeah, I think biggest thing would be just don't take no for an answer.
And as well, like, you know, when it comes to preparing for like a show, more so as a presenter, like, are you superstitious about certain things, like whether it's your preparation or stuff like that?
I don't know if that's superstitious. Maybe the odd time I might be, but like I think I just try and be as prepared as I can possibly be. Like with a commentary, with the presentation, yeah, I think you just try and prepare for every eventuality. Like the commentary, the old thing is, you know, what if somebody goes down, there's a 10-minute injury and you can't go back to the studio and you've got to fill for 10 minutes. What are you going to talk about? Now that's only ever happened to me, oh my God, twice or three times in 30 years of doing this. So, you know, I think it's a rare occurrence, but you just got to be ready. I would have like, and you know, most of the stuff that I prepare, you'll never hear if you're listening to it, because that's just the kind of the way it works. I won't, you know, you have to, I've a kind of process that I have to go through to know when I sit down to present or to commentate that I'm ready, and that I won't be planking myself with nerves thinking, oh, I didn't do that. And I didn't check whether he likes 4 Weetabix in the morning or 3, or she likes that, you know. So I just have a process I need to go through, and once I've done that, then I can kind of relax a bit and enjoy it, knowing that I'm ready for anything that comes at me. So I think that to me is the biggest thing. Over time you develop a list of things, or doing a list of things that are, you know, are important. And again, you'll fine tune that list and say, right, well, I'm going to get rid of that one because I didn't use that today. But I always feel that, like, if you think of your entire work as 100%, the audience will only ever hear about 10% of what I've done, because you could bore the head off people with some of the stuff that I would come up with and we'll come up with. So I think it's just important to feel you're ready in yourself. And if you are, well, then you're grand. Like, I'm not really superstitious, you know, but I just have a set routine that I like to stick to. and I've changed it and will continue to change it going forward if they still let me do this stuff. But, you know, I think that's kind of the most important thing for me. Go through the process that I have and know that I've done the stuff, and then sit down and you're ready to go.
And you know, obviously massive moments in sport, like for instance, when Argentina scored the winning penalty, like these moments are so synonymous with commentary. So like, are you preparing kind of lines before the match, whether it's France win, Argentina win, stuff like that?
Yeah, probably not as much as I should. Like, I know people do prepare these things. I remember Niall Cogley, who used to be the head of sport when I started doing the commentaries. Niall went on to work in Setanta and TV3 and Virgin. Niall said to me, in any say a soccer match, rugby match, GA match, there's only three things that are going to happen. Somebody wins, somebody loses, or it's a draw. So he said, you can prepare for those three things. And the reason he told me that was I did a few matches with him as the producer where I didn't prepare at all. And, you know, again, you learn by doing and stuff. And I have since started doing that. But like, you know, I don't know if I have any great commentary lines, but I like George Hamilton's "The Nation Holds Its Breath." Like, that wasn't prepared beforehand. I hear people on TV, not in this country, but abroad, and I know they prepare the hell out of those things. And maybe it's because I know and nobody else had noticed, but I always kind of feel that just sounds prepared, and it's a bit too cute to be wholesome, or whatever the phrase is. I think the really brilliant ones just come from nowhere, I think. Now, you know, maybe I can be accused of, oh, you missed that, or you didn't hit that, or whatever. You know, I haven't heard that too much, but like, I'm sure people do say that. I don't go looking for those sort of comments, but no, I think you can just have a theme, perhaps. Like, look, that final was all about Messi, and then it became about Mbappe. And I remember just talking, I think I said something about Messi's legacy, but I think I'd read that somewhere in a paper or in a preview. Like, I'd always try and read absolutely everything I can about these matches when you're doing them, try and find every bit. And that was the biggest match in 4 years, so you're going to have a fair bit to read. But yeah, I don't prepare them too heavily. I'll just have a thought. I'll have a thought in my mind. Like, I think I did something with Dublin and comebacks or whatever last year with the football final. But there was a line about Kerry there somewhere, but I didn't get to say that because Kerry didn't win it. But yeah, I just think it's you can have a theme perhaps in your head. I think if you have a line that you need to learn off, you then have to go looking for it. Oh God, where's that line? Where is that? You know, the killer ending I had. You know, where's that gone? So it's on a bit of paper somewhere and I can't find it. Then you're not able to use it. So you know, if you can't remember. So there you go.
And is there any goal that you haven't achieved in your career yet that you'd love to, like, for instance, working at a certain event or doing something in particular?
I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of maybe getting older a bit. I don't necessarily think, like, I'd love to go to the Masters in Augusta. I'd love to see the Super Bowl, which is in Sunday week. No, nothing really. I don't like it. You know, listen, I've been really lucky to be at, like, say, 2 World Cup finals, loads of All-Ireland finals. I don't think I've been a European Championship final, Champions League finals. You know, look, they're brilliant, and they're amazing to be at, but you're working at them. Maybe I want to go as a spectator and do a bit of corporate hospitality. I don't know. And maybe people will be quite happy with that, but that's another issue. So no, not really. I think, like, you know, listen, whether if you're in Tralee on a Saturday night and it's pouring rain, or you're in Istanbul at the Champions League final, that's the most important thing for you that day. And that's the way I would look at it. You try and treat them all the same, that they're all important, you know.
Oh, well, Darragh, you're a real legend of Irish sport for me, especially growing up and everything. So I really do appreciate your time coming on. Thanks so much.
No bother, Adam. Take care. Mind yourself.